Hello and welcome to Ola at Large, Aliyah Stories. Hi, this is David, and welcome back to the podcast. This podcast is about my journey as an Ola, which means immigrant, making Aliyah, which means to go up to Israel. I've been here for about 3 or 4 weeks now, and this past week has marked Holocaust Remembrance Day, or as it's known in Israel, Yom Hoshoah Siren, which means Holocaust and Heroism Remembrance Day. Mostly people refer to it as Yom Hoshoah. And this was my first Yom Hoshoah ever actually being in Israel. And so I thought as a new Ola, I wanted to share what it's like to be here for this important observance. So the public holidays in Israel actually follow the tradition of Jewish religious holidays and start the night before. So Holocaust Remembrance Day here in Israel started on the night of May 5th, and then the full day of May 6th, which is the day outside of Israel most folks recognize today. And one of the hallmarks of Yom Hoshoah is a candle lighting ceremony that takes place at Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. And we're going to talk more about Yad Vashem a bit later on in the podcast. The ceremony is available to watch on Israeli TV and also online. I'm going to put a link in the episode description. There are a few political speeches, which you can either give or take on, frankly. But the powerful part is the part where you have 6 Holocaust survivors telling their stories, and then each one of them lights a candle commemorating the 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust. All the survivors told the story of how they escaped from the terrible fate of so many and how they found their way to Israel. The men who were the participants, I think it was about 3 and 3, all served in the army and fought in the War of Independence, among other wars. It made me think about the circumstances under which they made Aliyah. They themselves were also Olim, and the feelings of persecution and horror that they had to endure, and the hope to make a new life for themselves here in Israel. And they all shared different versions of a beautiful, similar story. They made Aliyah, they found a partner, created families, their families created families. They were all grandparents and great-grandparents and are living healthy, fruitful lives here in Israel still, even at incredibly advanced ages. Some of them are in their upper 90s and seem pretty active and pretty spry. So it was really heartening to see that there are survivors still that are so vital and active and cared for here in Israel. And it all really reinforced to me how, frankly, lucky and spoiled I have it to have all the different support systems and tools to help me navigate my Aliyah, my family, the Nefesh B'Nefesh crew. It's a very different circumstance being able to obviously make Aliyah now, and all the tools that are available, between translations and modern tech. It's just a totally different story, and it really makes me value what I'm lucky to be able to have. So the next day on Monday at 10 a.m., there is a siren that rings throughout the country for 2 minutes in commemoration of the victims of the Holocaust. At this time, everything literally stops. Working, conversations, traffic. I encourage you to go online and Google the video of what it looks like in Israel when the sirens ring. I'll put a link to one of them also in the episode description. It's pretty incredible when the sirens ring and you're out on the highway. All the cars just stop in the middle of the highway, and everyone gets out of their cars. When I was driving at 10 a.m. Monday morning to go on my way, my timing was terrible, and I was coming outside of the building and stopped outside the building and spent it basically by myself in the lot in front of the apartment building. But I definitely could feel the energy from the sirens in Israel here, and you can feel the stillness and the solemnity of the occasion. I decided to spend the bulk of my day visiting Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Remembrance Museum. I hadn't been to Yad Vashem in something like 30 years or more. I went when I was a camper in Stay Hamed, which was a 6-week summer camp program for Americans to go to Israel for the summer that I did in 1983 and 84. And I think I might have gone back when I returned to Israel in 1988, but I don't remember. And I haven't really gone back since. And for all the traveling back and forth and the touring that I've done over the past 10 years as I've been coming to Israel, there was frankly something just keeping me going. It was just frankly not at the top of my list of things to do in Israel. I definitely have a recollection of when I attended as a young teenager. The memories of the images and the relics from those visits have definitely stayed with me. There are some pretty powerful pieces in the museum that I can remember from when I visited 40 years ago. A lampshade made of Jews' skin that was created by the Nazis. A bar of soap that was boiling down the bones of Jews, and those memories definitely stick with you. And in all these years, in the past 10 years that I've been in the UK and traveling around Europe, I will say I've not really re-engaged deeply back into the memories and the learnings of the Holocaust. I've been to Poland several times, never went to a concentration camp, and so I thought that this would be a good moment to re-engage with that part of our narrative. So Yad Vashem was founded in 1953, and it's dedicated to preserving the memories of those who perished in the Holocaust, telling survivor stories, and also highlighting the heroism of those who fought against their oppressors and the non-Jews who helped save Jews from death. The museum is on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem, and a new museum was built in 2005. It's designed as a triangle, and it's built tunneling into the mountain from the entrance, and it goes through the mountain, and then it comes out on the other side, and that is meant to echo the descent into darkness and the eventual rebirth and renewal of the Jewish people in Israel. I took part of a English-speaking tour in the museum, which took a few hours. The museum lays out how the Nazi Party took over Germany, making Jews out to be the root of all the bad things that happened in Germany. And by introducing the ideas of race and racial purity to protect against any connection to Jews. The most, I would say, powerful parts of the exhibit are the artifacts from the concentration camps and from the gas chambers. Of course, you can't really go through the museum and look at history and not reflect on what you see in the news recently and seeing how students are barred from going to school, and that was part of what was instituted in Nazi Germany in the beginning. How young adults were brought into the Nazi ideology early on, and there's obviously some eerie parallels that I'm sure if you've seen comparison pictures on social media. So all of this hits home in a very different way on these days. And beyond the history that is laid out for you in the museum that shows how Nazi Germany, the Nazi Party took over Germany, and how Jews were increasingly persecuted and ostracized, and then eventually how the Nazi government wages war, starts World War II, and then eventually engages in the final solution when there are just too many Jews for them to manage, and they want to get rid of all of them, and the only way to do it is to kill them en masse. And it's very powerful to see the artifacts from the concentration camps and from the gas chambers, the collection of shoes taken from the victims, the beds they slept in. And it continues to stick with you, And at the end of the exhibit is the Hall of Names, which is a memorial to the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust. So the main hall is composed of these two cones. You walk in, and the first cone is about 30 feet high, and then there's a well underneath it that goes about 30 feet below into the rock, and the bottom of the well is filled with water. So on the upper half is a display with about 600 photographs of Holocaust victims and fragments from the pages of testimony. And then all this is reflected back down into the water, and that's meant to represent the unknown victims. And then as you look around, the outside of the platform is a repository of all of the testimonies. There's about 2.7 million pages of testimony from Holocaust survivors that the museum has collected. And that part is probably one of the most moving of them as you go through the museum. One of the other parts of the museum that I find always very moving and important is the Garden of the Righteous Gentiles. So this is where there are trees planted in memory of people who are called righteous Gentiles, and those are non-Jews who took it upon themselves to save Jews during the Holocaust. Righteous Gentiles have to be nominated as people who saved Jews not for a financial gain or individual personal gain, but did it from an altruistic perspective. And I find these stories just fascinating, and there are all sorts of interesting stories. There are some of the more popularly known ones, like Raoul Wallenberg, and his tree is actually right at the front of the garden. And there's also other lesser known stories of heroism that are commemorated in the garden. And I encourage you to look up some of this information on the Yad Vashem website, which I will include a link to as well in the episode description. The stories of the righteous Gentiles always interest me. There's a great story of a British righteous Gentile named Nicholas Winton, who saved hundreds of Jewish children And there's a great movie about his life and the incredible television show when the survivors and those children all came to thank him later on in life. It's stars Anthony Hopkins. It's called One Life. Another story that I find so interesting is the story of Chiun Sugihara, who was a Japanese diplomat in Lithuania, and he saved hundreds of Jews as well in the Holocaust, and has also been identified as a righteous Gentile, and is in fact the only righteous Gentile from Japan. And I think that's just a really interesting story as well. Would love to find out more about that and see how that story could ever be amplified. At the podcast, we try to include a new Israeli word of the episode, and the word I'm going to choose this time is Amcha. And that basically means nation, the people, but it's kind of used as in terms of talking about the group of Israelis generally that you maybe are with, and it's kind of when you're in with just the great and the good, and everybody from everywhere is, mashed together on the beach or at a movie theater, and you're just with everybody. And I think people know the feeling of, when you're just in a space and there's all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, and it could be a little exasperating, but it also can be a little comforting. And I find the comforting part at this stage definitely overweighs the exasperating part. And I can look around with a smile because it's all new to me. So I like the feeling of looking around and feeling Amcha around me. That's it for the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe. Please send me any questions or comments. And in the next episode, we'll get into what happens in the next couple of national observances, which are Yom Ha'atzmaut and Yom HaZikaron. Thank you so much. See you next time.